Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music, and I'm back with Danny Boy Level 3. It's video number 3. You should check out the other two in our series Harmonizing Melody. We've done some conventional harmonizations, some extended harmonizations using secondary dominance and chromaticism, and now we're going to open the gates and let in some other textures. What's it going to be like? Let's find out. Okay, first of all, there are no levels. You know that, right? But for me, the way I sort of divided my thinking about it was, how can I, first of all, harmonize this melody using simple diatonic chords? In the first video, that's all we used. Chords from the F major scale, especially focusing on the primary chords, F, the 1 chord, B flat, the 4 chord, and C, the 5 chord. We followed the melody with the harmony tones. It's called coupling, and everything moved up and down together. It actually sounded pretty good. Should we take a look at it? This is what it sounded like. That's a solid representation of the song and is going to get you through most gigs, as they say. But going on, we wanted to introduce contrary motion, harmony that moves down, harmony notes that move down while the melody moves up, and perhaps a little chromaticism. We also wanted to tonicize different key centers or tonal centers within the scale. So we used secondary dominance. A secondary dominant is a dominant chord that doesn't ordinarily live within the scale, but can push towards a new center. For instance, if we're in the key of F and I want to push to the C center, I use a G7. G7 isn't in the key of F, it would be G minor. It's a secondary dominant. Well, let's listen to our level 2 example. And of course, there's added richness because I began to use 7th chords. Both of those examples use 4 notes. Well, as I moved into level 3 and as I was thinking about it last night, what am I going to do? I realized, first of all, that I was going to allow myself 6 tones, which means I've got a lot more access to complicated sonorities. I wasn't afraid of coupling, and as we can see, looking at the first moments, and I just finished the rest of the song, by the way. So we heard phrase 1, phrase 2, and now here in level 3, we're going to do phrase 3 and phrase 4. And I used a bunch of different techniques here. We're going to pick it apart. But first, let's just listen to the whole thing. I know this looks like a lot. Listen to it a few times. It'll sink in. Let's go back to the beginning of that and take a look at what's happening. Okay, so in the very first phrase, and that's all those notes, what I've decided to do is create and think of it as 2 layers. The first layer is a second inversion triad. You can see E, A, C. The second layer in the left hand, or at the bottom, we might give it to brass and winds, is also a second inversion triad. This one is C, F, A. Now, we've got some doublings. There's 2 Cs and 2 As. And if you look closely at what's happening, it's moving in parallel, and all of those notes to begin with are notes from the F scale. So what we're getting here is pan-diatonic harmony, and it doesn't step outside that sonority until we get to halfway through the phrase. The parallel fourths, which are set up as we descend here, here, and here until finally this target chord, lift us a little bit out of the key signature until we finally arrive down here. And this is a beautiful sounding, I guess I would just have to call it a D flat major chord. When I look at the melody tone is F, and the third of D flat major is F. I know I can aim for a D flat major chord, and that F, which is the melody tone, will sound very bright and pretty. It's kind of a thickness to the end of this phrase. Let's listen. Those last 4 chords are parallel fourths, kind of a so what chord sound. And it opens out. Well, going on to the next section then. So there's no rule that says the melody has to be at the top, despite the fact that up until now, that's what we've done. So I've put the melody now down in the bass, and it's quite low. And because of that, I wanted to have a sparkling, dense sound up on the top. The first moment is back to that sound of the parallel fourths that we just heard, kind of trying to capture the ear and sort of redirect it. That's these 4 chords on the top. And then the next part, basically, what I noticed as I looked at this melody was, and I'm always looking at the melody and saying, what is the lyric telling me? What's the melody telling me? Well, this melody says to me, pentatonic scale, right? E, D, C, A, G. So I just copied that rhythm going up instead of down in the upper harmonies. These notes are all from that pentatonic scale, all from that pentatonic scale, all from that pentatonic scale. It looks like someone's just going mash, mash, mash. Well, that's basically what it is. And yet the result is really interesting, isn't it? So we're using an approach that gives us denser sounds because we're using more notes, and we've got to manage them carefully, but it's working for us. All right, let's go on. Listen to what happens in the next section. Here we are at the highest point of the song. This high A up here is the highest point in the melody, and it's the place where the singer really has to dig deep. I can't sing that A above middle C. You have to really be a tenor to pull it off. And the word in the first verse is shade. It's kind of darkness, right? It's sort of the sense of being, it's kind of like I'll be there in dark or light. So here, this moment is dark, and yet it's the highest note. So what I chose to do was I looked at the melody again. Oh, it's an A. Now, if we're in the key of F, A is the major third, and the F chord would ordinarily be the chord that we'd harmonize that moment with. But instead, I don't want this to be F major with an A on top. I want it to be F sharp minor with its minor third, also A, on top. That moment of darkness has a kind of a poignancy. And so I really aimed for it. And you can see that what I've done in the right hand is pretty much the same chord progression that we did in level 2, but the surprise when we leap to F sharp minor is like a little bolt of lightning. Wow, right? Super fun. And then you can see I've just sort of allowed myself to fall out of it and resolve simply by the end of the phrase to another minor chord, the relative minor of F. So I'm kind of like trying to hold the listener a little bit more comfortably now. That F sharp minor is shocking, but the D minor is back into the feeling of F. Let's listen to the whole phrase again. F sharp minor winding up in D minor. And maybe you notice it's very much like level two's secondary dominance. There's a strong A7 sound right here, going to the D minor. Makes sense, right? Well, we've been through quite a journey, and I actually wanted to sort of pull back and present the last phrase simply. It ends with a major 7 chord again, but the sonority up until there begins with only 3 voices, opens out to 4. The contrary motion gives us some interest, but it ends rather gracefully, I would say, very much within the key signature. Diatonic melodies offer opportunities for us to either live within a scale or step outside it. And I think that's what's appealing about harmonizing a diatonic melody, because it sets up an expectation, which you may either fulfill or not. And in fact, the drama of arranging and storytelling in music comes from that expectation, fulfillment, seesaw. That F sharp moment is the big high moment melodically, and having a surprising minor chord on it is, for me, delightful. And then cradling the listener at the end back into nice, familiar sonorities is a gentle, gracious technique. Well, I hope this has been useful. I wonder if you'd be interested in doing an arrangement or reharmonization of Danny Boy or any old diatonic melody. This is the way to study. Just pick something up and say, what can I do with it? Every artist, eventually, as they achieve greatness and as they really become themselves, will be known for a approach to harmony, perhaps to arranging, that is most particularly theirs. As you get more experienced and own who you are and what is important to you, your approach will refine. Jazz musicians talk about going into the woodshed and practicing so no one can hear you, and coming out with a fully formed point of view. Having a musical point of view identifies you to your audience and to yourself. It gives you something to practice and also can act as a goal to work towards. Well, I think about this stuff a lot, and I'm really happy to be able to share this work with you. I'll see you next time.